Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the end of days, at least for this year. This is the Dark R podcast, and I'm your host, KDG, Doomsayer in our year ender. Before we start, I'd like to point out that this podcast is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to any existing person, living or dead, is purely coincidental. The aim of this podcast is to entertain and nothing else. Have you ever watched a horror movie and found a character who seems to know what's happening? The resident nerd who reads about folklore and tells the main characters what they need to do? Well, over the years, people around me have constantly told me that I was that guy. Fortunately, we don't live in a horror movie, but all the same, I'd like to help my listeners out just in case they do manage to encounter the unexplained. This is it, everyone. Tonight we'll be finishing our 4-part series, which finally gets its title. Before that though, we shall recap. Every single one of the paranormal investigators that went into Ashencrest Institute has been taken by the entities plaguing its hallowed halls. However, before the night was done, a singular figure arrives and surveys the area. With experience and determination under his belt, he vows to get everyone back home safely. Will this nameless host be able to rescue his protege and his team? Will we ever figure out who our protagonist is? Let's see as we sit back, relax, and prepare ourselves for the final conclusion to our series, Ashencrest. Two weeks before the investigation, 10:04 p.m. After a long night of hosting, he retired to his bed. He sat on his bed thinking about what he just finished doing. It was Wednesday, and the people seemed to have enjoyed the discussion as it was about the old urban legend, the Ashencrest Institute, just outside of town. He always wanted to conduct an investigation there, but a friend insisted that he can't go there, especially if he's going to be alone. Respecting his friend's wishes, he was content with just reading about the massive institute, which served as an asylum in the old days. Only recently has he collected enough rumors and stories to actually use the asylum as a topic for discussion in his segment. However, he couldn't shake the feeling of sheer curiosity for the place. It had everything that a good investigation needed. A creepy background story, a huge location, never-ending rumors that spread almost daily. And it also felt as if the place wanted to be investigated. He could feel its presence just from reading about it. It was like something was calling him, beckoning him to come visit. Suddenly, the message tone from the PC went up and, groaning, the host went to see who it was. Turns out, it was Dan, his self-proclaimed protege. He was asking for advice and about how he wanted to investigate the place right away with a couple of his friends. They've spoken on many occasions, and the host had taught him the basics of investigating the paranormal. Dan, however, was eager to learn, but sometimes comes off as too excited. Knowing full well that the kid was more talk than walk, he just wished Dan good luck, thinking that he wouldn't go through such a massive investigation at such a young age. Little did the tired host know that he'll be regretting this decision for the rest of his life. The day of the investigation, 12:32 p.m. The host couldn't believe his eyes when he saw the message that was left for him from Dan. Dan had actually continued his plan on investigating together with Jeff, Kathy, and Riz, more fans of the show. They left him a message telling him that they'll be doing the investigation tomorrow, and they just wanted him to know how thankful they are for the discussion that he made 2 weeks prior. They figured if they wanted to be paranormal investigators, they'd start big and make the host proud. The host, a bit shocked from the news, was suddenly hit with guilt and worry. They were way too inexperienced for such a location, he thought. And the asylum itself. He found himself suddenly obsessed with the institute. From the moment he hosted the topic, a strong gut feeling told him to do the investigation himself. But above all, he decided against it because it was way too dangerous to take on alone. But now the feeling was stronger than ever. He wanted to go there. He wanted to be there. The host, though hesitant, prepared his stuff to follow his protege and his group of would-be investigators. Investigation night, 11:32 p.m. He pulled over just outside the gates. He studied the surrounding area for any signs of life. An open gate, a car with the headlights on, a couple of trees, and, of course, the huge structure in the middle of it all. As he came in, the headlights of the car parked outside made the structure all the more ominous. Sighing to himself, he got out of his car and walked towards the structure. He took out his pack, and lighting a cigarette, he stopped to stare at the asylum. "Now then, let's see if I can get those kids back," said the host to himself. He thought about bringing out his equipment, but seeing as he was going to meet the kids, he didn't think it was necessary. For now, at least. Finishing his cigarette, he walked towards the entrance. But as he neared the gate, a gust of wind greeted him. Ominous, but he's used to things like this before. What struck him as weird was the car parked in front of the asylum. It was wide open and the lights were shining directly in front. He figured being so far from the city, there should be no one around for miles. He continued making his way into the place when he heard a long honk from the car. Startled, he ran back outside to check what was up. When he looked at the parked car in front, the lights prevented him from seeing who was sitting inside the car. So he circled back, only to see no one there. Getting closer, he checked the front seat only to be horrified with what he saw. A severed hand had a death grip on the steering wheel. The host was shocked, to say the least. He took a few steps back, not wanting to see the hand again. He wanted to puke on sight, but somehow he managed to push that feeling away. Collecting himself, he came near the car again, hoping to see any clues on how the hand got there. But when he mustered enough strength to look inside again, the hand was gone. 11:48 p.m. The host was shocked to see the hand was gone. He recounted what he saw, and he actually believed that it was the real deal. It must be the stress of it all getting to him. He was seeing things. He was better than that, though, he thought. This was just nerves. Nothing to worry about, he said to himself. He decided to go back inside and check everything out. The Hall of Silence was pretty popular during the discussion. He figured it would have been where they set up first. He headed down the hall, calling out to the members of the group, thinking they might be near it. Seeing that no one was responding, he checked each room that were on each side of the hall. Still no one until after the 6th room. In the last room, he found a bag containing sound recorders, no doubt Dan's equipment. None of them were recording anymore, so he took out one and started playing it. It had about 10 minutes of recorded data. The first few minutes passed by in silence. It seems as though Dan was holding the recorder at the time. But then he heard Dan breathing loudly. The host listened more intently as he heard that Dan was suddenly running for some reason. He began shouting at the others. The host was starting to worry. Towards the very end of the tape, it seemed as though that Dan had calmed down a bit. But then he started screaming, as if someone was pushing him down. The host listened in horror as he heard Dan's voice slowly start to fade away. Then, dead silence. He stopped the recorder, not knowing what to make of what he just heard. Sitting down on a nearby bed, his thoughts raced as to where the others were. He was still half hoping that this was all a practical joke. A sudden scream from the floor above echoed through the hall, and before he even knew it, the host was dashing up the stairs towards the second floor. He wasn't even over the fact that Dan was in trouble when he already had to look for whoever screamed. He couldn't understand how any of this could be happening. The most you usually get from any investigation would have just been a grazed arm or a cold yet electrically charged feeling in the air. But not this. This was a whole new level, even for him. Not pausing for a second, he frantically ran through the halls, shouting for any of the people he came here to see. They had to be here somewhere. He shouted and shouted all throughout the second floor. Not getting any responses, he decided to run up the third floor to see if he could get any of them. He didn't like this feeling. The asylum's many rumors were starting to become true. But despite all this, the feeling of wanting to investigate didn't really go away. The asylum was still calling out to him in a bizarre way. It wanted him to stay. Reaching out to the third floor, something caught his eye. A black little object lying on the floor. As he went near it, he realized it was a camera. A very expensive camera at that. Probably from one of the people that Dan brought in with him. He looked around for signs of the people, but still nothing, so he checked the camera for any clues. The latest pictures have taken a disturbing turn. It was pictures of Riz, but she looked terrified. It looked as if she didn't know where the camera was as it was taking her picture. Now he was very worried. There was no sign of anyone anywhere, and all their stuff left disturbing evidences of what might have happened. As he was about to check out the fourth floor, he heard a faint whisper saying, "I'm over here, sir." It came from the very end of the hall. 12:16 a.m. The host stopped mid-step when he heard the whisper. It was faint, but then he heard it very well. He took a few steps back and listened again. It was still very faint, but he did hear it again. He was positive that he heard it from the end of the hall. So he walked towards it, still listening intently. He couldn't see much in front of him because of the dark, and the lights from the car only reached a few feet behind him. At the very end of the hall, he could only see a single door. Hesitating, he made his way towards the very end of the hall. Slowly. He wasn't really paying attention to anything except that door. There was something about that door that felt wrong. So he inched toward it, not minding his surroundings. Closer, closer. A few steps away, he heard another whisper. "Open the door, sir. Let us out." He ignored the whisper. He was merely a few inches towards the door when it happened. He didn't understand how or why he did it. But to this day, he regrets the decision he made. His hand was already on the doorknob when he suddenly stopped, turned around, and headed downstairs. He proceeded to go through the Hall of Silence towards the front door. He made his way past the car in front, its lights still shining on the building. He didn't look back. He got back in his car and drove away from this place. He wept while driving away. He didn't look back. But still he wept as he sped up towards the highway, leaving Ashencrest to its dark, looming shadow. Months passed and I knew what I did was wrong. I knew that I didn't open the door because I was afraid. Fear gripped me to such a degree that I couldn't look myself in the mirror since that day. I tried to move on, but every night they whispered to me. I can still hear them, still asking for help. I ignore their pleas because I choose to live a silent life. I continue these segments because, in my mind, I'm still in Ashencrest. I never left the place. To this day, they still haunt me, not ever making me sleep. And the day I first looked into the mirror, there they were, glaring back at me, cursing me. The asylum was an obsession, a place that I've always wanted to visit and investigate. But that night took it all away. I lost my protege, but in a way, they're still with me. In that sense, Ashencrest has stayed true to its promise. And that is a wrap for the Ashencrest series. I hope you all enjoyed this year-end special, as this was the first time that this story was ever told in its entirety. I'm very happy that I was able to share this to all of you, and hopefully you all enjoyed it too. We actually found our title towards the end of it. This will be our 10th episode, and it will be the last one for 2021. I'll be making more and more of these, of course, as the year progresses, so I hope you can still have me as part of your weekly dose of horror. I'm planning a lot more content next year, so fingers crossed I'll be able to do all that I want to do with this particular podcast. So keep on tuning in if you want to see that stuff next year, hopefully. If you like content like this and you want to see more, you can check out previous episodes of the Dark Hour podcast here on my channel. I also made a playlist for it to make it easy for everyone. You can also listen to the Dark Hour podcast on Spotify and all other podcast playing services. Also, Spotify has started putting in ratings for podcasts recently, so I would highly appreciate it if you give us a rating if you like it. And I hope you guys are staying safe out there. This nightmare of an episode was just insane to record because I'm jumping through hoops because I'm recording with fireworks in the background. So if you hear anything, you know what I missed. But I hope you guys are staying safe out there. Again, this has been the Dark Hour podcast, and I am your host, KDG, saying good fright and good night. Happy New Year, everyone.